here, and then we'll get started today. And welcome. You can feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box if you'd like. We have some folks on standby on the chat to answer any technical difficulties that you might be having. All right, everyone, it seems like the flow is trickling down a little bit for signing in, so we will get started. We have a lot of folks on here today, and we're really excited to have all of you. As a small disclaimer, we just want to make it clear that this is a webinar about applying to this mini grant opportunity. We'll discuss a little bit of background at first about the opportunity, but a majority of this webinar will focus on eligibility details in the application process. If that's not what you were signing in on here for today, have no fear. We have a previously recorded webinar about our efforts that can be found in the link that Maggie will share in the chat box. If you have found yourself in the right place, great. We'll get started in just a moment. Just a couple of technical things right now. As we've been saying, this webinar is recorded and will be uploaded publicly for folks to view afterwards. So please just keep yourself muted and keep your video off during the webinar. We will have time for questions at the end. We should have plenty of time to take any participant questions. You can enter those questions into the chat box, and there are also folks that are monitoring that chat box throughout the webinar that might be able to answer your questions live. So if you just click on that little icon, you'll be able to see the chat box and ask any questions that you have. And I'm going to ask Stephen, our awesome tech guy, to start recording right now if he hasn't already, and we'll get started with going through this awesome opportunity. So this funding opportunity is part of a collaborative effort that was built on the input and the suggestions of NOAA, aquarium, and aquaculture industry partners throughout 2020. We convened to have a bunch of discussions throughout the year, and a lot of the goals and objectives of this effort are reflective of those discussions. Our overarching goal here is to support innovative ways to engage a target audience with discussions about aquaculture topics. Applicants can apply for up to $15,000 for projects no longer than 12 months. Eligible projects will propose a partnership between an informal learning institution, aquaculture industry, and NOAA partner, and we'll get into a little bit more about those definitions in a bit. Applications are due on April 2nd of this year, and we recognize that there's a ton of work to be done within the United States aquaculture industry to get it to where it needs to be. But this effort is about education and outreach, and it's a very small funding opportunity to get innovative and creative projects off the ground. So that's the opportunity that we're going to talk about in the context of this webinar. So today we will go through the goals of and how to apply to the eeBlue Aquaculture Literacy Mini Grant Program. I'm going to give a brief background first, and then we'll go over the details of the solicitation, where to find application materials, some details about successful examples of partnerships, and we'll have some time for questions, as I mentioned, at the end. As we go, there are also folks monitoring the chat, as I mentioned, that might be able to answer your questions in real time. And for those of you that are just joining us, please just keep yourself on mute and your cameras off during this presentation. So some context about the eeBlue partnership. This, as I mentioned, is a collaborative effort between NAWA and the North American Association for Environmental Education. It's a 5-year effort, and we have 2 years left, and it's to help create a more environmentally literate society that has the knowledge, skills, and motivation to conserve our natural resources and build more resilient communities across the country. Opportunities with eeBlue also strengthen professional networks. They offer high-quality STEM education, provide education and outreach for educators and other audiences, and as well as a bunch of other awesome funding opportunities that you can find on the eeBlue website. Building resilient communities means access to sustainable food and knowledge of aspects like working waterfronts and what they look like. And that is why the North American Association for Environmental Education, or NAWA, partnered with us to manage these eeBlue Aquaculture Literacy Mini Grants. NAWA was founded in 1971 in the US, but it now includes 30 countries. They really serve as the professional association, champion, and backbone organization for the field of environmental education. It is the organization that professionals look to for best practices in driving excellence, cultivating collective impact, and mobilizing support through education. And they've really brought that strength to these mini grants, and we're excited to partner with them. So aquaculture means a lot of different things to different sectors, different communities, regions, and the type of aquaculture that's being discussed. So we came together with NAWA under this common interest of enhancing aquaculture literacy and better teasing apart those complexities of the term, using environmental and informal educator expertise. And the hope here is to make aquaculture a more commonly understood topic, including what aquaculture means to different communities and what it takes to have a career in the field. So there's a lot of text here, but this is the definition that we came to for aquaculture literacy in parallel with NOAA's environmental literacy program. You can find it in the text of the RFP itself. If we wanted to distill it down today for an elevator pitch version, aquaculture literacy is really about folks understanding base level information about aquaculture, potential careers, and its related environmental topics at enough of a level that they have the social license to make informed decisions about aquaculture in their community. So these mini grants are one piece of a larger effort to mobilize a community of practice for aquaculture literacy, or COPAL. COPAL is referenced in the RFP, and its activities from 2020 are really driving the goals of this opportunity. Those activities included connecting across the education, industry, and research sectors to share best practices and learn from each other about what it takes to discuss aquaculture and other complex topics. And we believe that establishing, convening, and supporting this community of practice will make a significant contribution towards the overall success of NOAA's sustainable aquaculture initiatives. And this includes leveraging resources across partnerships with NOAA's informal educator partners as well as industry partners. The Coastal Ecosystem Learning Centers Partnership is one of those examples, also known as KELC. It is referenced in the RFP. It is a consortium of 25 aquariums across the United States that collaborate regularly under NOAA's Office of Education's guidance. Millions of people visit KELC institutions every year, and by working closely with these aquariums, NOAA can provide them with the latest credible information on the benefits of sustainable aquaculture while also learning about community needs and perceptions from these place-based organizations. Tapping into the reach of our KELC partners allows us to engage communities across the country on these important issues and share knowledge across sectors. The funding for these mini grants was initially put forward by the National Marine Fisheries Service for our KELC member institutions. And you will see multiple times throughout the RFP that members will be prioritized, but in the face of COVID impacts, we opened up the call to other informal learning institutions to release some pressure on our partners to lead these efforts. So this is an open opportunity to informal learning institutions outside of the KELC network, but we recommend that if you have a KELC member in your region to please reach out and contact them. In general, there are a ton of great aquaculture outreach and education opportunities out there. The National Marine Fisheries aquaculture web pages house a ton of videos, fact sheets, web stories, documentary grower profiles about the aquaculture sector. Sea Grant funded the Great Lakes Aquaculture Collaborative, among other aquaculture hubs, and the farmers themselves tell their unique stories on their websites. And aquariums have exhibits dedicated to sustainable seafood. But the question remains how to better connect the efforts to leverage resources and knowledge share from the lessons that we learn as we provide these programs to the public. And we held discussions about that through a series of virtual workshops last fall. And I wanted to share some of the common goals that emerged from those workshop discussions today, just to help you understand kind of what we're getting at with the outcomes of these mini grant opportunities. So some strategies that folks would love to see are better diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in aquaculture, including building stronger relationships with tribal nations and diversifying the workforce. Another strategy, dispelling misconceptions together rather than trying to tackle them alone within our sectors. And it is widely acknowledged that community needs benefit from a unified national dialogue. So while there is importance in regional understanding, if we can connect across those perspectives nationally, we can have a better impact on helping folks understand what aquaculture means. Some commonly requested tools were visualizations of what types of aquaculture look like and how they compare to other types of aquaculture, maybe through virtual tours. Using GIS mapping that's beneficial to the industry to also educate the public, creating new interactive technology like QR codes and apps, and finding ways to better track partnerships because of high turnover across sectors. Some commonly requested opportunities to engage included sharing storytelling skills, building aquaculture demonstration facilities, and weaving context into regulation when you're talking about regulatory messaging. So meeting folks in the middle so that they can understand where regulations come from and how they compare to other regulations. So with this in mind, getting into the mini grants themselves, the program goals, partners, and eligibility requirements. This competitively based funding opportunity aims to support partnerships between informal learning institutions like the KELC Aquarium members that I mentioned, the aquaculture industry, and NAWA itself by funding the development of aquaculture education and outreach programs that are responsive to the following goals of COPAL. And those goals are bringing aquaculture education programming to institutions and or target audiences currently lacking those resources, building the capacity of environmental education providers to offer high quality programming in informal and formal settings by matching aquaculture communication needs with existing research, and developing creative approaches for public engagement that promote a culture that values innovation, exploration, and community relevant learning as a context for improving public aquaculture literacy. So what we're really getting at here are, like we mentioned, innovative, creative ideas that we can help get off the ground as a proof of concept for the importance of educating the public about aquaculture. So to clarify some definitions in the context of this particular opportunity, what counts as aquaculture outreach and education and examples of what does not count. Formal and informal programming for K through 12 and general public audiences counts. Programming for industry would also count if you're teaching the industry about education and outreach opportunities. Consumer, industry, and network outreach and outreach technology, like the phone apps that I mentioned. Information that disseminates complex aquaculture topics in ways that are digestible to broader audiences. And enhancing connectivity in existing workforce development efforts. This can include career awareness, career resources, scholarships, internships, fellowships, higher education partnerships and collaborations. But this does not include research for gear technology, lobbying or outreach to businesses to market products, refining permitting and regulatory guidelines, or if you can create a new degree with $15,000, more power to you, but that's not quite in the realm of the scope of this effort. These are meant to support these innovative ideas that are hopefully proof of concept for larger programs in the future. I mentioned the 3 partners, and this table is really meant to help applicants understand who falls where. It can be found on the mini grant fact page as well as in the RFP. So NAWA partners include NAWA line offices and headquarters, regional fisheries and aquaculture programs, sea grant programs, which includes extension, national estuarine research reserves, regional fisheries science centers, and NOAA scholars and fellows. And we just want folks to note that federal employees cannot receive direct funding for these projects, but they are encouraged to participate in such activities. And in addition to a letter of commitment, sea grant partners must submit an indication that their program director or their program supports their efforts for this project. Industry partners include shellfish, seaweed, and finfish growers or farmers, grower associations, hatcheries and hatchery staff, aquaculture organizations, tribal associations and organizations, and chefs and sustainable food restaurateurs. Informal learning institution partners include CALC member institutions, and then in the context of this mini grant opportunity, we're defining an informal learning institution as one that's engaging with the public on coastal and marine issues, and that includes tribal organizations and centers. So you'll notice that tribal associations and organizations might count as either an industry or an informal learning institution partner. And we'll go over specific examples of this in a moment, but to be honest, we work at the national level, and you all know your backyard better than we do. So if you haven't been able to contact folks through our resources, please don't let it deter you. We created a Google form that we'll put in the chat right now to try and help better connect folks. It's a purely voluntary form, but if you would like to, you can fill it out, and we'll share the responses with the participants so that they can better connect with each other and find contacts. Some other eligibility requirements. Applicants must propose this 3-sector partnership as the backbone of the project, but can have other entities involved. Eligible applicants are limited to institutions of higher education, K-12 public and independent schools and school systems, other nonprofits, including community-based organizations and informal education institutions, such as museums, zoos, and aquariums, state and local government agencies, for-profit aquaculture organizations and operations, and Indian tribal governments in the United States. And this is the definition that we use for many of our grants programs that are funded through eeBlue. Federal agencies, foreign institutions, and individuals are not eligible to apply. However, federal agencies, foreign institutions, and individuals may participate as an eligible applicant as a project partner. So as I mentioned, NOAA federal employees cannot participate as a paid project collaborator, but they can participate as a paid project, or an unpaid, unpaid project partner. I'll get into more about the project partners versus leads and project PIs later, but I'm going to go through the application package quickly first, and then go over some frequently asked questions about those eligibility requirements. So materials can be found on the eeBlue Aquaculture Initiative webpage. This URL will pop up at the header of many of these slides, but we'll have Maggie paste it into the chat box right now. you will find all of the downloadable application materials here in the gray box towards the bottom of that page. So when you click on the request for proposals, it will bring you to the downloadable PDF of the application package that you see here. There's a lot of information in here, but it is meant to be your reference for understanding the goals and rationale behind this effort and how to write a proposal that reflects those goals. So we have kind of a welcome and background information section, some grant information that includes eligibility, funding amount, grantee responsibilities, and other grant information. We have information about the application process, and we would highly recommend that you check out section C, the review and selection process, to see the criteria that our reviewers will be guided to review with. And we also have some appendices that go more into the review and selection factors, sponsoring partners, definitions, and links to resources. So all of those can be found when you download the PDF for the request for proposals. You can also find a fact page with clickable sections that take you to some general topics that you might have questions about. This page is regularly updated. It's fairly fleshed out at this moment, so there should be some information on there about general questions that you might have about eligibility, how to apply, what the scope of this effort is, things like that. So visit that fact page if you have any questions, and if your questions are not answered, you can reach out to the eeBlue team. So in that same gray box at the bottom of the splash page for this effort, you can also find quick access to links to the application templates that we provide for applicants. They are also linked within the RFP itself and on the fact page that I just mentioned. So starting from the top, the title page should be the first page of your application. The template is a fillable PDF. You'll notice that it requires that you do list the informal learning institution, aquaculture industry, and NAWA partners proposed in the project, as well as project leads and some contact information. We've created an Excel sheet with a fillable budget table for that is also downloadable, and once filled in, it can be saved as a PDF and attached to the rest of the application materials. The first couple of tabs within that Excel sheet explain definitions of budget categories and provide an example to applicants. And then the last tab in the spreadsheet is the template for you to fill in. And this is a small opportunity, so not a ton of budget narratives should be necessary, but take a look at some of the definitions and the guidance here to help determine how to best fill out the budget. We put together guidelines for the project description itself. The only thing that's mandatory that you see on this page is that the description does not exceed 5 standard letter size pages. It should be in 11-point or larger font with 1-inch margins. This does not include the title page, budget information, resumes, letters of commitment, etc. The rest of this template is really meant to be a suggested way of making sure that your project description hits all the key points that reviewers will be looking for. We highly recommend writing this with the evaluation criteria open on the side. That can be found in the RFP, as I mentioned. And we just hope that this helps folks narrow down what it is that we're looking for as we ask our reviewers to review these applications. There is also a timeline milestones chart that's really up to you, aside from the maximum of 2 pages. It can be as simple as a written quarterly goals and milestones list with bullet points, or if you want to get creative, there are templates online to create these things. As long as it fits onto 2 pages, that works for us. So put all together, this is what the application should look like: a cover page using the template provided, a project description in the format required, a timeline or milestone chart that's no longer than 2 pages, a budget table using the template provided, a resume of the project leads, and letters of commitment from participating partners that are no longer than 1 page. And all of that should be submitted by April 2nd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern to the eeBlue at NAWA.org email address. finally, to help applicants keep track of the application components, it also explains, we have this checklist of application pieces. It also explains that each letter of commitment should be no longer than 1 page. This checklist is for you. It does not need to be turned in with the application materials, but it is a helpful resource to make sure that you're checking all the boxes. This, as I mentioned, is downloadable on the splash page for the eeBlue program, Aquaculture Initiative program. And it, as I mentioned, explains the page limits and the formatting restrictions for each component of the budget. So everything that's listed on there must be included with your application. Some important dates to keep in mind. This webinar will go up on the eeBlue Aquaculture Initiative site to be downloaded and viewed, along with a PDF of the slides and a transcript. Application packages are due to the eeBlue website, email address by Friday, April 2nd at 8:59 p.m. Eastern. We will review applications through May 2021 and announce awardees in June. That puts July as the earliest possible start date. However, as the RFP explains, NAWA will work with the grantees to ensure that the timeline of the project makes sense with COVID impacts to the applicants. So just keep that in mind. NAWA is great at working with their grantees to come up with ways to assess COVID impacts and move forward. So some additional details to answer some commonly asked questions about eligible partnerships. You can find calc members listed on the page that's at the bottom of this slide here. Our fact page also has links to the calc member institutions, or our RFP also has links to calc member institutions. Where can you find NAWA partners? For one, the National Marine Fisheries Service Regional Aquaculture Coordinator website has contact information for regional aquaculture coordinators from NAWA that are across the country. They're a great resource to tap into to get going in the right direction, and they are anticipating your emails. This is also linked in the RFP and on the fact page. Other NAWA partners, another option is to email our Sea Grant Aquaculture specialists. So to get in touch with them, you can reach out to this email address that's listed here, and you can CC Mark Rath and Chuck Wyrick with the subject line eeBlue Aquaculture Literacy. They are also anticipating your emails, and we'll get back to you to point you in the right direction. And again, these slides will be uploaded for folks to reference back to later. So the RFP directs applicants to utilize NAWA and NAWA assets. Links to those assets can also be found in the RFP and on the fact page. They include NAWA's Community Engagement Guidelines for Excellence, which should be used and considered in the applicant's plan for engaging their target audience that they've identified. You can also find a categorized list of NAWA assets linked as well within the RFP and on the fact page, as well as aquaculture-related NAWA assets from the National Marine Fisheries Service. So who may serve as a PI or co-PI? This gets a little bit tricky, but we're going to walk slowly through this. Principal investigators, PIs, or project directors are required to be employees of the organization submitting an application. Because consultants or contractors often don't typically have the level of authority to distribute funds and manage grants, they cannot serve as PIs. PIs should check with the sponsored projects office or equivalent to inquire about possible restrictions for funding opportunities. As we've mentioned, federal employees cannot serve as a PI or co-PI. However, they may be included as a project partner. This is because PIs and co-PIs usually indicate a paid lead on the project. Federal employees cannot be paid through this opportunity, so they can only be considered partners. NEARS and Sea Grant programs, however, are not always federal employees, and they are eligible applicants as PI or co-PI. They can also serve as a NAWA partner, or they can serve as both. Sea grant programs, as we mentioned, must include a statement or indication of support from their program director that can be as simple as a couple of sentences, just indicating that they acknowledge that this project is being proposed. So each project PI, co-PI, and partner must submit a letter of commitment. In the case of the NAWA partner being a contractor, that letter of commitment should come from their direct supervisor or someone that has the expertise appropriate for supporting the project. How many applications can an investigator or institution submit to this funding opportunity? We strongly encourage that an individual serve as the lead on only one application submitted to this funding opportunity. We don't want folks stretching themselves too thin. Institutions may submit more than one application, and individuals may serve as co-PIs or key personnel, so partners on more than one application. And a given project idea may only be submitted once. In the event that a project is submitted multiple times, we'll contact you, the applying institutions, to ask them if which application should be withdrawn. So a couple of examples of successful partnerships that hopefully clear up some questions. Again, these are just examples, and I'm just using them to help clear things up. But for example one, a health institution maybe wants to integrate tribal heritage perspectives and stories better into their docent training. They want to convene a workshop that connects aquaculture resources from regional aquaculture coordinators, communication experts to the tribal aquaculture members to hold discussions to better understand each other's perspectives. In this case, the tribe is the industry partner, the fisheries facility is the NAWA partner, and the Kelk institution is the informal learning institution partner. For another example, using similar folks, say a tribe wants to start a seafood education program to enhance an existing traditional foods and culture program. Say they want to use NOAA expertise from exemplary sea grant programs to adapt to fit their needs, and they want to partner with the Pacific Coast Shellfish Growers Association to find relevant content and members in the broader aquaculture community that might be interested in their efforts. In this case, the tribe is now the informal learning institution partner because they're working to enhance an educational and outreach program that they have. Sea Grant is the NOAA partner, and the Pacific Coast Shellfish Growers Association is the industry partner. And in this case, Sea Grant, maybe the NOAA Sea Grant partner is not federal, so they can be a PI, a partner, all of the above. So as you can see, some institutions can count as either informal learning, industry, or NOAA partners. And what does this mean about PI and co-PI? So in example one, our shellfish industry and informal learning institution partner can be paid, so they can be PI or co-PI. In example two, we have no federal employees or staff or offices, so anyone is fair game to be PI and co-PI. Maybe one institution is leading and then the other two are co-PIs. So what is the total amount that you can apply to? The total amount is $15,000 for the duration of the project, including direct and indirect costs. Some partners have different indirect cost rates than others, and some may not even have an indirect cost agreement. So just make sure that you're working with your partners to understand the indirect cost guidelines for their institutions. And as stated in the RFP, if a lead does not have an indirect cost agreement, they can submit a de minimum of 10%. And within the RFP, there is information about where that language comes from and how to set it up. Match or cost sharing is not required for this project and will not be taken into consideration, but it is not banned. We just will not take it into consideration as part of the review. Funding requested should be appropriate for the number of sites or audiences to be served with the proposed program model, and applicants should provide justification for the scale of the program implementation in their proposals. Collaborative multi-institution project might be considered if it represents a joint submission of two distinct but complementary proposals and includes 2 informal learning institutions, this time one of which must be a CALC member institution. So let's go back to those examples that I just had and explain this multi-institutional aspect. It is a very niche situation, but it was meant to leave space for existing programs to share best practices and expertise and maybe leverage the funds for them to reach a better goal or larger objectives. So using the partnerships that we just discussed in this case, say our tribal partner in planning these applications finds synergy in the outcomes of each of the proposals that they're on. If both projects end up getting funded, we will work with these grantees to determine if pooling the funding makes sense so that we can stretch the money farther to make a larger impact. Again, this is a niche situation and should not be the backbone of determining your application and your partnerships, but we wanted to leave room for instances like this that might arise. How will the funds be distributed? NAWA is managing the grant, so this is a non-federal opportunity. They will provide awardees with a template and instructions for grantee invoicing. Grantees will submit invoices either quarterly or monthly, up to them. And NAWA will work with the grantees in order to distribute the funds and contracts. So consider what partner is best suited to facilitate this process when you're choosing the lead PI, and make sure to connect with your partners and discuss these aspects of the program early on. So one more reminder, all of this is linked on the eeBlue page and in the RFP itself. There are also resources linked for the larger community of practice effort. Lots of information in the RFP itself about the background. You can poke around these resources if you have any questions about what we've been up to for the past year, and feel free to reach out if you're looking for anything in particular that you think is not represented within these resources. Grantee responsibilities can be found on page 12 of the RFP. Final awardees are required to submit interim reports, a final performance report, and financial reports to NAWA. Suggested templates for these will be given to our grantees. Again, this is a small funding opportunity, so we will work with the grantees to submit interim reports that aren't too crazy, but let us collect some information about progress and maybe some problems that they've run into so that we can help fix them. The final project report will be due upon project completion, no later than 30 days following the award end date. The interim reports and the final performance report must include some photos and videos of project activities. We're hoping to share these across our cohort of grantees so that we can all figure out how to leverage the great resources that come out of these grants efficiently. Additional guidance on reporting will be provided in Q1 of the project through a Google group and a shared folder. And final awardees will also be expected to share project outcomes in an end of grant symposium. And we will provide additional technical support from the team if it's necessary. So if you're identifying technical issues that you're running into in your implementation, maybe you need some access to some resources through Google or a meeting platform that you don't have, we will work with you to facilitate that access. And again, some important dates to remember. February 16th, the funding opportunity was announced. This webinar will be posted after it is completed. Application packages due April 2nd to eeBlue@nwa.org. The review process will take place April through May. Awards will be announced in June, and the earliest possible start date is July. All right, so we have plenty of time to take some questions. Just as you ponder and enter them into the chat box, we would like you to stay on mute and write your questions into the chat box, please. But just to answer some questions that have come through, do you have to partner with a NOAA affiliate? Yes, we need a representative from NOAA. This includes Sea Grant and Sea Grant Extension. Will the grant fund workforce development education? If you have an informal learning institution partner, a NAWA partner, and an industry partner, and together those partners determine a common goal that has to do with workforce development, then by all means that counts. I think we went through some of the institutions that count as partnerships, and extension does count here. Formal educators and institutions, as long as they have an informal learning institution, aquaculture industry and NAWA partner, then you are welcome to collaborate on a proposal together with a formal educator or institution. And I think that is this. Oh, sorry.
I've been trying to keep track of all the questions, and so we've been answering the ones we could, but we made a list of them. So do you mind if I can just read them out to you? And
yeah, I just have a couple more from the registration form, okay, and then we'll go over to the chat box. So will this grant support purchasing equipment to support our aquaculture workforce training program? If you're working with an informal learning institution partner and a NAWA partner and an industry partner, and together you have come to the common goal of some equipment that you could put together a career training program with, then absolutely that works. And can these grants be applied to lakes? Yes, the Great Lakes are available, are eligible applicants to this opportunity. And I think that covers the ones that we did not get to respond to through email through the webinar registration. Okay,
great. So Brianna, I'm just going to read through some questions. We have quite a bit. I'll start with the first one we saw, which was, do you suggest we work with partners in our region, or can we work with partners across the country?
You can work with partners across the country, absolutely. Partners in your region might have a better understanding of the resources that are available to you kind of more immediately, but we do encourage national conversations, so absolutely partner with others if you want to.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we have a couple of similar questions here from two different people. So one person said, we are a college and independently runs a state hatchery, so it's an industry. Would we count it as an industry partner? And then someone said a similar question, not certain whether organizations within a university are eligible as an informal learning institution or not.
So if you do outreach to the public about issues related to coastal and marine environmental topics, then you count as an informal learning institution. So if you have an outreach and education program, then you would count, you also would count as an industry partner if you have a hatchery and you're working with the hatchery technicians or facilities.
Thank you, Brianna. All right, next, I have a question from someone who works for University of Georgia Marine Extension and Sea Grant, and they have a shellfish lab next door, also associated with UGA. And they want to know if they still need to partner with outside groups. They also have a marine education center and aquarium.
Yes, so we would prefer that you partner with outside groups. We're trying to get folks together that wouldn't normally have the chance to work together and hold conversations. So I would encourage you to look for other partners within your area, that maybe another informal learning institution or another industry partner that could hop on board and maybe gain some access to resources that you have developed already.
Thanks. All right, two other similar questions as well. The application package is showing a structure for a logic model. However, the grant checklist does not make mention of one. Should this be included?
So the application package is showing you the logic model that we put together at the beginning of this effort in 2020. So that logic model is meant to be a reference for you to see where our heads were at as we embarked on this larger effort at the beginning of 2020. If you want to include a logic model, we won't say no, but we understand that that's a highly educator-specific resource.
Okay, great. Seeing two more questions unanswered so far. So the next one is it possible to have more than one informal learning institution, not a CALC, that is included in a single project, in addition to industry and NAWA partners?
Yep, yeah, you can have more than one informal learning institution. You might want to clarify the roles of each and determine who has the capacity to kind of take the lead, but you're more than welcome to please spread the word about awesome resources to other institutions as well.
Okay, great. And I think this is the last question so far that we have not answered yet. What if partners are based in different regions, which maybe was answered in the beginning here, but if the PI is based in a different region from where the study implementation is happening with students and tribal members? So for example, which region is it considered to be a part of?
So I would work with your partners to determine what region is going to be the most temporally impacted quickly by the resources that you are proposing to put together. We are looking to reach 4 fisheries regions. We would like to reach more if possible, but our goal is to reach a minimum of 4 NOAA fisheries regions with these. So I think you can actually, put both regions within your application, and I think that's totally acceptable. It's great to have some national conversations about this. And I see a new question is, are there plans to offer this grant again in the future? I hope so. The more times that we can offer this, the more job security that I have. So we really hope that this grant is a proof of concept for how important it is to connect across disciplines and connect folks that wouldn't normally get to talk to each other during a normal workday, so that they can leverage the expertise of each sector to get some really high quality exemplary programming out there. So as of right now, we can't say yes, absolutely, this will happen again, but we're making a pretty good case for it. And I see what would a public aquarium AZA member count as an informal learning institution?
Yeah, I think I got that one.
Sorry. Oh, I see. Sorry, I'm looking at.
No, that's okay. I think so far that's all the, we just had one come in. So are aquaculture workshops for high school students and research institutions eligible?
Yeah, any workshop that you can bring folks together to, we would love to see, of course, each partner that's required to be a part of that workshop, and hopefully educate high school students about careers and research in aquaculture. But yes, that's an eligible idea. And could partners be out? So we cannot fund partners outside of the U.S. We are not able to fund projects with a lead PI that is outside of the U.S. But if you have partners outside of the U.S. that you would like to work with, that you have previously established relationships with, then you're more than welcome to do so.
Brianna, I just add to that, just make sure that the actual work is occurring in the U.S.
Right. Sorry. Thank you, Jamie, our grants team specialist here. Thanks for catching that. So the work has to happen within the U.S.
And yeah, there's a question, this might be more of a kind of advice question. So part of an organization that trains youth on coral reef restoration, any ideas of an ideal partner?
Where is your organization?
Okay.
What region? Sorry, or is it, okay, Florida. Yeah, so Florida Aquarium is part of, or Maggie will remember the name of the Florida folks.
It is the Florida Aquarium. Yeah, they are a group member. So they would be a good person to reach out to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then our Florida Sea Grant folks are a great resource as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm realizing people didn't have permission to open the form. I'm so sorry. I will send that out to the participant list after this with the proper permission so that you can fill out the form. Okay, if folks don't have any other lingering questions, we will upload everything onto the eeBlue Aquaculture Initiative site, and you can feel free to reach out to eeBlue at NAWA.org to ask any other questions, or visit our fact sheet to see if your question is answered on there. So thanks everyone, and we look forward to reading your application. Thanks, Diana.